Wish you all the best after this summer vacation, for these 30 days that actually have gone for the holidays. Without wasting time, that we would like to start one chapter from political science that is called power sharing. Before going to start the power sharing, we must know actually what is the objective of power sharing. See, power sharing, this chapter power sharing will help us to understand the fundamental mechanism of power sharing and how power sharing takes place in democracies, especially democracies like India, Sri Lanka, Belgium, United States of America, etc., etc. But this chapter is limited to power sharing in two comparative democracies. One is Belgium and another is Sri Lanka. Before starting the power sharing, the chapter, the lesson, I would like to ask you a few questions. You know what is the meaning of sharing? Sharing means when we give and take with each other something. Whether it is food that you share in the classroom with the friends, the books that actually you share, the notes that actually you share, the stationery that actually you share, or anything that actually we are sharing with each other, that is called sharing. And second question, suppose if you don't share, suppose you have been sharing something that with your friend, but your friend is not sharing with you. How do you feel? You feel that actually how mean and how selfish the friend is. It means sharing is based on mutual give and take. Then only we'll be calling it as sharing. So power sharing also, similarly, power sharing also takes place in democracies in the same way. It's not that actually government has to enjoy all the power. Government has to share its power with the different communities, the different groups, political parties, the linguistic groups, religious groups, caste groups, and other social groups. This chapter that we'll be doing a comparative study of power sharing in Sri Lanka. This is the neighbor of India. And second is Belgium, a Central European country, Belgium. You may have heard the name of Belgium. And how we will see that how both the countries have their power sharing taking place. How these countries have made arrangements in the power sharing. We'll start, but before discussing about the power sharing, we must know the demographic composition of these countries. So we'll start with Belgium. See, Belgium has three kind of ethnic compositions, three kind of people. One is the French-speaking people, the Dutch-speaking people, and the German-speaking people. The Dutch were the majority in Belgium. They speak about 59% of the total population of Belgium speak the Dutch language. Second group, the second ethnic group that comes in Belgium is the French. They are 40% of the entire country, and Germans makes up for 1% of the total population. So this way it is 100% population. But in the capital city of Brussels, the demographic composition, I mean the ethnic composition in Brussels is different. In Brussels, the situation is different. How? The Dutch were in minority and the French are in majority. That is 80% of the Brussels population, that is the capital's population, are the French, and 20% of the total population in Brussels is the Dutch-speaking people. There are no German-speaking people in Brussels. Now we are going to Sri Lanka. Okay, before going to Sri Lanka, I would like to ask you one question. What is the meaning of ethnic? Ethnic means people of a particular physical type or culture, or the both. It is a social group based on shared culture. This is called ethnic. For example, we have in India, we have different kind of ethnic people living in India. For example, in Northeast, in case you go, you'll have the Northeastern states have a different kind of ethnic compositions. Especially, I'm talking about Arunachal Pradesh, Tripura, Sikkim, etc., etc. Now we'll go to the linguistic compositions in Sri Lanka. Means what are the different kind of language spoken by the people of Sri Lanka. People of Sri Lanka speaks different kind of languages. The majority of the population that speaks in Sri Lanka are speaking a language that is called Sinhala language. 74% of the total population in Sri Lanka are speaking the Sinhala language, whereas 18% of the total population in Sri Lanka are the Tamils. Of these 18%, 13% are Sri Lankan Tamils and 5% are Indian Tamils, those who are both Hindus and Muslims. Besides this, there are also 7% Christians, those who speaks both Tamil and Sinhala language. So this way it makes up for 99%. 1% actually we don't have the data to discuss. So this way the Sinhalas speaking people are the majority, that they are almost 74% of the total population. They are the majority in the country, followed by the Tamils, the Indian Tamils or the Sri Lankan Tamils. Now we are going to discuss about how power sharing takes place in Sri Lanka. See, Sinhalas are the majority language speaking community in the country. We will discuss one example regarding the democratic arrangements or non-democratic arrangements or autocratic arrangements or majoritarian arrangements. That you decide whether it is democratic, autocratic, majoritarian or otherwise. The kind of arrangement that is actually being done by the Sinhalas government. You only decide and tell me. In the year 1956, the Sinhalas government has passed an act, 1956, passed an act under which the Sinhalas government has declared that is already being discussed in the Constitution. The Constitution enshrines these principles that Sinhala shall be the official language of the Sinhala state, the Sri Lankan state. Sinhala is the official language, one. Number two, the Constitution declares to foster and protect Buddhist religion, that is called Buddhism, as its official language, official religion. Number three, the Constitution also declares that the Sinhala government can promote and can give preferential policies towards the Sinhalas in the central government jobs, in the university positions, and etc. etc. So it does mean that the state of Sri Lanka become a communal state because it has applied, it has adopted Buddhism as its religion, it has adopted Sinhala language as its official religion, official language, and it has made a preferential policy where it supports and favor the Sinhala candidates in the central government jobs and university positions. This is the arrangements that is being made in Sri Lanka. And because of this preferential policy and majoritarian policy, the Tamils were upset, disappointed, annoyed, disgruntled because of this policy. We have not discussed about what is majoritarianism. What is a majoritarian policy? Majoritarianism means a belief where the majority community think that it has the right and the power to rule over the country, means it has the right to impose its rule over the minorities. In other words, when the majority community think that it has the right or the power to rule the country whichever way that it likes. This is called majoritarianism. And in this majoritarianism, the majority community does not even care or respect the minorities. This is a one-way policy that only favors the majority community. This is a type of government that is based on communal consideration, communal politics, politics based on religion, politics based on community opinion. It's a government by not majority opinion, a government by majority community. This led to the feeling of alienation among the Tamils, both Indian Tamils and Sri Lankan Tamils. They feel that actually they are isolated, alienated by the Sri Lankan government, by the Sinhala government. because their aspirations, their demands are not being fulfilled, because they demanded that Tamils should also be equally respected and be recognized as an official language. So they have demanded that let the Sri Lankan government, the Sinhala government, should respect and recognize their language. But the Sinhala government did not recognize, care the language or the demands. Hence, during the 1980s, the Tamil people in Sri Lanka started making stronger demands. They set up political parties. They set up even extremist parties, extremist groups like the LTTE, Liberation Tiger of Tamil Elam, and started demanding a separate state, especially in those areas, constituting those areas where the Tamils are in a majority. They asked for a Tamil Elam. Elam means a state, a Tamil state, and that is what is opposed to by the Sinhala government, and this led to the clash between the Sinhalas, the government, and the Tamil people, leading to a violent civil war within the country. What is a civil war? Civil war means when two group of people clash with each other within the country, and their fight or their clash is so intense that it sometimes appears that it's a war. And this kind of community clash or clashes between two groups is known as the civil war. And do you know what is the impact of the civil war? You may have heard in economics that Sri Lankan government, or the state of Sri Lanka, though a smaller country, the island country, is smaller than India, but its economic condition, economic growth, economic development is much better than India. If you check the United Nations Development Program, UNDP's, the index of the countries, then you find that Sri Lanka is much ahead of India in economic development. But due to the civil war that continued in 1980s, 1990s, along these decades, Sri Lankan economy has declined. The historical monuments, cultural heritage, they were also in a state of ruins. The entire environment was in ruins. The socio-economic condition was in a state of threat and almost appears to be terrible. There are thousands of people being killed from both the sides, especially when the Sinhala government has used the military for suppressing the Tamil sentiments, Tamil demands. Many Tamils were being killed, and finally, after the capture of Prabhakaran, the LTT chief, the civil war come to an end. Peace returns. This is what actually the Sri Lankan government has declared, that the peace returned to Sri Lanka, but peace cannot be returned at the gunpoint. You cannot create peace through the gunpowder, by suppressing the feelings, demands, and the freedom of speech of the people. You have to accommodate them. And we'll see this, we will compare this kind of arrangements in Sri Lanka with that of Belgium. And you compare this, that Sri Lanka is claiming to be a democratic country. Belgium is also one of the best democratic countries in the world. Now you compare that how Sri Lanka and Belgium are different, though both of them are claiming to be democratic. Let's see in Belgium. I have told you 59% of the total population in Belgium speaks Dutch language, 40% speaks the French language, and 1% speaks the German language. That is the situation, this linguistic, the ethnic composition of entire Belgium. When it comes to Brussels, I would like to repeat again, it is 20% people only speak the French language, whereas 80% of the people speak Dutch, 80% people speak French language and 20% people speak the Dutch language. Means the Dutch, which are majority in the entire country, the Dutch are in minority in Brussels, whereas the French, who are in minority in the entire country, they are in a minority, they are in majority in Brussels, in the capital city. The political parties, the politicians, the political leaders, they started realizing the immense diversity that existing in democracies like Belgium. Hence, they wanted to recognize the diversity, they wanted to respect the diversity, and then they sit together, all the communities sit together and try to find out a solution where all these communities can be accommodated at the same time. So between the years 1970 to 1993, the Constitution of Belgium has been amended almost 4 times. All this is being done so that the diversity within the country can be accommodated, whether it is the linguistic diversity, whether it's the ethnic diversity, or whether it's the religious diversity that can be accommodated. And now we'll discuss about how this accommodation has been done. 1. During these years between 1970 to 1993, many steps were taken. Number 1, now the number of ministers in the central government for the entire country, the number of ministers in the central government will have equal number of ministers. I mean, the central government in Belgium will have equal number of ministers from both the communities, the French and the Dutch. 1. Number 2, many of the powers which are so far enjoyed by the central government were taken away and given to the provinces, to the states. Means now states are not subordinate to the central government, to the center. It means both the center and states were balanced with the power. Now the states enjoy equal power with the center. Means states are not subordinate. 3. Number 4, no major laws can become effective without the approval of both the communities. Number 4. Number 5, no fundamental structure of the constitution can be amended by any one of these communities. It has to be approved by all the communities together. Number 4. Number 5, in Brussels, the arrangement is also made such a way that both the communities can be happy, can be accommodated. 1, the number of ministers in Brussels has to be equal from both the communities. You may have a question right here. Why do the French agree for equal number of ministers in Brussels where they are in majority? I would like to tell you, I would like to ask you, why do the Dutch agree to have equal number of ministers in the central government when they are in majority in the entire country? So this is a give and take. This is a give and take. Since Dutch agree at the center, hence the French agree in Brussels. Number 6, you may have questions and doubts right now. So what happens to the Germans? Germans were also accommodated. They are not being left alone. A special arrangement is being done and a special provisions is being made in the constitution whereby a community government was set up that has to be elected by people of members of each language community, no matter wherever they live. There is a separate linguistic community government, language community government for each community. They will look after the language, education and culture related issues of each community. That is why, because of these kind of arrangements, democratic arrangements to accommodate diversity, Belgium today is admired, applauded, complimented as one of the best democracies in the world, both in theory as well as in practice. Okay, since it's time, that actually we are supposed to stop here and we'll continue the same chapter in the next class. Thank you children, thank you, bye-bye.